Hello, I'm Chris Whitlock.
I am Frank Strickland. We are with AI Leaders. Chris and I recently formed AI Leaders to help leaders in the national security enterprise, but broadly across government, successfully integrate AI into major programs and deliver mission impactful results through AI projects. Now, we have been doing and leading this kind of work in both the public and private sector for 60 years combined, the two of us. Recently retired from a global corporation. You might ask, why aren't you fishing or playing golf? Well, we are playing a little golf and occasionally fishing, but we are very passionate about this topic and the need, the strategic need for America to win this global AI competition. And we began by writing a book. So Chris, let's start there with the book. Why write a book on this topic?
I think, Frank, helpful. I'll just share the slide I had discussed with you that will maybe put this into context quickly. So if you are familiar with the space, certainly the report that is on the left ought to immediately ring familiar. This is the National Security Commission on AI report. We cover this separately in some material that we have built in online training, but it is an extensive activity that documented why AI is critical to the national security of the United States moving forward and what in a strategy context needs to be done. And it has led to some really hard-hitting early changes, and it has set a framework for what the nation will do over the coming years.
Literally billions of dollars of investment impact.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, well, what's the keynote you would think of there?
Yeah, I mean, everyone should think about the direct line between the NSC Commission's report and the CHIPS Act that President Biden signed in August.
For certain, man. I would agree on that. One of the biggest. Now, one of the co-chairs of the NSC report, Eric Schmidt, and he was working alongside the former Deputy Secretary of Defense, Bob Work, in the NSC report. Eric founded this activity, a not-for-profit, which is the Special Competitive Studies Project, SCSP. They are continuing this work around what needs to be done, and they are doing it in major thematic areas. We have been taking all this material in, having led businesses in this space and leading contract support to the government. And we were left thinking, there is just a practical hole that we have dealt with over and over, and that is how to do this work better. If we're going to win, the why is crucial. The what of the strategy is crucial. But how you do the work and how we make the magic happen, that's got to get attention. And that led Frank and I to write this book around the national security competition with a really practical focus on how do you make it so. For leaders with really practical handholds around programs and projects, people and technology, but all contextualized to national security.
So Chris, that immediately begs the question, surely there are other books that have been written on this topic on how to lead AI. I mean, advanced analytics and AI, relatively new in the national security space. I'm mindful not long ago that the deputy chief of one of the military departments, one of the military services, 4 military services at the time, the deputy chief of analysis said to me, and I quote, "Hell, Frank, we can't even count the stuff we have, much less run advanced models." So advanced analytics and AI, relatively new, but surely there was already, or there are already volumes out there. Why did we write the book again?
Yeah, I'll show just another screenshot, Frank. But to me, and it's important, both Frank and I come from the perspective of leading significant businesses in some major firms over time. Booz Allen Hamilton, IBM, Deloitte Consulting, all great participants in the space, and working with a host of smaller businesses. So we've had to develop people, and we've had to do self development. And we're very familiar with the landscape, and the reality is most of what is written is not really on point to what a national security leader needs, whether in industry or otherwise. Let me just show another page that will illuminate that. So we have written this book, which is on the left, just released in early December of 2022, and it focuses on how. You'll notice in the subtitle, it's a practical guide for government and industry leaders. In the next view, we'll show you exactly some areas where it's highly differentiated. The 8 volumes that you see on the right-hand side of this are all really interesting. I have read 6 of them. Not all of them, but have been through overviews of the other 2. And you'll find some themes when you look at them. One of the most pertinent is virtually everything is contextualized in commercial settings. That has value, but it does not cover, unambiguously, just does not cover critical things that matter to us in the national security space and in a federal programs context. You know, we are not commercial enterprises, and the realities, the complexities of what we have to deal with in national security, you're just not going to find that content out there. And as we hit in that last slide, NSCAI, really valuable report. SCSP, very valuable in strategy, why and what. This is how. And if you look at these volumes, what you'll find, if you just go to Amazon and your query is leading AI, leading analytics, managing artificial intelligence, things of that nature, these are some of the top volumes that would pop up in response to that query. So these 8. And
yeah, unique things to the national security enterprise, like conducting clandestine operations or targeting low signature targets. They're just, and you could go on, you know, for thousands of mission tasks and mission areas. They're just some unique elements in the national security community. Not that there aren't some that cross over, like cyber defenses, but yeah, there are unique mission areas and mission tasks in national security.
We're not running DoorDash.
You're right.
We're not running DoorDash. No, look, I'll use DoorDash. We're not running DoorDash.
Right.
So to me, just this next slide can help people grasp why we wrote the book, the nature of the content in the book, and the nature of the content in training. A big facet of what we need, and you'll hear the pejorative quips, now everything is becoming AI. Or on the flip side, people just grasping for what am I actually trying to do in this space. We lead on the left-hand column there with how to better think and interact as it pertains to AI and affiliated analytic activities. But we move immediately to...
So Chris, forgive me, just to make sure people are oriented. So what you have in the left-hand column here is basically the chapter outlines for the 8 chapters in our book.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. And as you flip down, we move immediately from that thinking and interacting to programs. That's how the government executes work. The Congress authorizes and appropriates money. That is in the form of programs. We have to integrate AI into programs, and that's a challenge. In order to do that, you've got to navigate the valley of death, as you'll proverbially hear it called. And that's a very budget-centric activity. And it's a challenge for us as a nation to accelerate progress. And a lot more discussion needs to happen at the program level and budget level in order to create that.
And we would say, Chris, there are literally, if you went into the Department of Defense, for example, there's 1,000 of these major programs. And then you go to the Department of State, you go to CIA, NSA, you go to the Department of Homeland Security. So there are thousands of programs. AI is not going to get equally integrated into every one of those thousands. And so leaders have to make just fundamentally some big decisions about where to prioritize. So how do you do that? How do you think about it?
Yes, Frank, yes, and yes. I think, if there's a common theme you and I could recount from people we go around with in industry, it's too many science projects, not enough getting moved into programs of record or big significant programs. That's an issue. And thinking more programmatically, not a science project, not a demonstration, but how do I integrate capability into enduring and sustainable capabilities? That conversation has to center on programs.
Right.
And that's a big facet of what we address in the book with the two different major classes of programs, technologically oriented and those that provide services, but then unpacking that in a practical way for leaders. We give a background in leading data science. We are not trying to run a Coursera course and teach you how to program or perform some of the data science techniques. But in our experience, Frank, I mean, it's important that you understand what it is and how you think about screening people and things of that nature. So we've tried to cover that practical content.
I don't think you can lead in the space. The AI discipline or AI solutions will involve multiple disciplines. It'll involve software engineering, ML ops, et cetera. But data science is the core discipline. That's where the data is cleaned. It's where models are built. It's the core discipline. And if you're going to lead in the space, you have to have some working knowledge. You don't need to be a data scientist. You don't ever have to touch a Jupyter notebook, but you can't be ignorant and you can't be operating at a highly conceptual level of data science.
That would be the passion. And we think it aligns with just everything that most of us would experience in working with the space. Our expertise matters individually and collectively. We've got to bring the right expertise to jobs. And what we want to do is equip leaders with just the basics and fundamentals they need to know there. Then projects, that's where the action happens in well-formed project teams running to a standard. And we offer leaders a way to approach projects with particular engagement points by the phase, given the nature of the work. That's what we offer there. I think a really helpful chapter on leading people. And Frank, you've been heavily involved in this over time and development, but one big takeaway or so on leading people?
Yeah, I would say we cover the talent life cycle that exists in every organization, whether it's the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency or the Department of Homeland Security or Customs and Border Protection. There is a talent life cycle in all of those departments and agencies, and there's a talent life cycle in every industry. But we cover the talent life cycle from the unique perspective of leading data scientists and AI practitioners through that talent life cycle. And so,
yes.
Kind of very practical. How do you lead with an eye toward data scientists and AI practitioners?
And then similar in tech, without elaborating it, we cover content that's material for leaders in making some of the tech decisions that you're likely to be confronted with, either depending on your role, one of several major common roles, or the types of tasks you are trying to enable. Now, quickly, and I won't belabor this, there are a number of things far right which are big. How do you lead in a phase which is increasingly AI centric? If you look at these volumes, they're actually quite interesting, but they are not addressing the how to get the work done. That's our focus and passion, is how do we get more of this work done so we get things built in the space more quickly. Now, I'll draw your attention, third from the right, managing data science. That's a good volume. It's an interesting volume. It's written by a Russian data scientist who has spent the vast majority of his career supporting Russian banks. And he gives some overview on data science attributes and then a lot of attention on running a successful project, how you create a tech ecosystem that is pertinent, and some of the important dimensions of leading people. But it's a good illustration, entirely commercial in orientation, in fact, international background in orientation and a peer competitor, we might add, but not irrelevant. If you flip to fourth from the left, how to lead in data science. That's a great example as well. It's written primarily for data science practitioners. So someone who already is at the keyboard and they're tackling problems, they're working the data management issues, et cetera. How do you lead? It's commercially contextualized. It's written by a couple of very well credentialed people who primarily focused on the Asian marketplace, but it does not cover a lot of the elements that are crucial if leaders are going to apply themselves and we get the progress that we want in the United States in the national security sector. So I think the key takeaway is, Frank, you and I, in doing this and working it for a long time, we have found the space just, we don't get the kind of attention here that we need to, and that's why we wrote the book.
Yeah, if you start at the departmental level across the national security enterprise and work your way down into the project level, there are about 5 different leader roles, big leader roles that we talk about in the book. And all of those leaders need to be equipped to perform their role with something we call beyond awareness. It's not sufficient to lead that you're just sort of aware about AI and you can walk in a room and drop a few buzzwords. You need to have a set of leader practices, a set of axioms that you're applying in the decisions you make and the guidance that you give and the collaboration that you do. And that's what the book and the subsequent course, that online course that we built out of the book seeks to do.
Yeah, I think that was a great way to phrase that, and just making it practical as well. You could be a surface warfare officer in the Navy, but you are now being brought into a systems development or a staff environment where AI and analytics are important. This book will equip you to engage effectively, even though you don't come from a data science background necessarily, or you're an artillery officer in the Army. You might be a system developer, but you haven't had to grapple with the AI dynamics, either to enable it in your architecture or to integrate what teams are doing into your delivery. It's going to help equip you. If you are a program leader and you're grappling with where do I put my attention in priority, et cetera, we've tried to give practical handholds for leaders in different fitting different personas, whether you are government or industry, as Frank and I have been for me for most of my career, Frank for much. We try to give you something practical here in this book.
So we are Chris and Frank. We are AI leaders, and we exist to help you lead in the AI space and help America win this global competition. So we hope this content has been helpful to you. Stay tuned to our channels as we will be providing regular content to hopefully help you in your role in the future.
Great.